say from the moment I open my eyes, I have seen angels. This is normal and natural for me. Everyone has one guardian angel, and it doesn't matter whether you're good or bad.
In the realm of spiritual guardianship, Angel Michael is revered as a powerful protector of Israel, watching over the land and its people with unwavering dedication. With his unparalleled strength and wisdom, Angel Michael navigates the complexities of the Middle East, orchestrating divine interventions that promote harmony and stability that are well detailed in the ancient text. Forget about the ancient texts. Still as we speak, it's happening now in Israel. Archangel Michael appears in Israel whenever they need him, fighting all of their battles just as he did in the past. Wings, flames, and halos. When we think of angels, the first set of things that come to our minds are wings, flames, and halos. But what if we told you that's not always the case? In fact, angels are reported to have appeared in different forms to different people, ranging from a bright light to a gigantic creature with wings. Although we can't be sure what they really look like unless we see them ourselves, the Bible details some humans' encounters with angels that we can take clues from. Starting with the story of the time the first man and woman were sent out of the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis, God sent angels known as cherubims to guard the path to the tree of life, accompanying them with flaming swords. At the same time, angels can be invisible to humans, just like in the story of Balaam and his donkey written in the book of Numbers, where his donkey saw an angel, but he didn't. Some parts of the Bible also make us understand that angels can be really terrifying, so much so that we as humans won't be able to stare into their faces. An example is Daniel's encounter with the angel Gabriel, written in the book of Daniel, where he wrote, "I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a man clothed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his words like the sound of a multitude." If that wasn't scary enough, Ezekiel described his vision of an angel as wheels inside wheels with 4 faces and eyes round about them. While some Bible scholars have claimed that Ezekiel wasn't talking about an actual angel, some other descriptions of angels are even more terrifying. Over the years, the appearance of angels has been a topic of debate among Bible scholars. However, the truth remains that angels appear in different forms. And as they have different forms, they also have different ranks and missions. For example, Angel Michael isn't just an angel, but an archangel. For clarity, archangels are angels with specific purposes, and they are also believed to have higher ranks than other angels. Archangels can be chief messengers of God, as in the case of Gabriel, who announced the birth of John the Baptist to Zacharias in the 1st chapter of Luke. He told Zacharias specifically, "I am Gabriel, that stand in the presence of God, and I am sent to speak unto thee, and to show thee these glad tidings." This verse is another confirmation that the archangels have a higher rank, as they are permitted to stand in the presence of the Supreme Being. However, their purpose is not limited to delivering messages, as they can also be warriors. The Winged Multiple Star General. As for Angel Michael, his description doesn't sound like he is a friendly angel, but one that goes about with a sword and uses it on the bad guys. If you don't believe, ask the devil. The Bible details moments when the devil had tasted of Michael's sword after a war broke out in heaven, long before the earth was formed. According to the scriptures, every angel in heaven ministered and served God, and surprisingly, the devil known as Lucifer was one of them. Lucifer was a winged angel who was described as the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Not only was he created with the most precious stones, but he also had an important task in heaven, and many looked up to him. But over time, he began to think that perhaps he could gain something from this honor. Maybe he could even become greater than God. With these thoughts of greatness in his heart, He drew to himself other angels who also wanted to gain something for themselves instead of offering all honor to God. Therefore, a war broke out in heaven between the devil and his followers and other angels, with Michael being at the forefront. That day, the devil was sent to the earth in damnation, and it is believed that he still roams the earth today, causing trouble. Although that story sounds like a movie, it wasn't the only time Michael was seen in action. The book of Jude also refers to an event where Michael had to struggle or dispute with Satan about the body of Moses after his death. But in the end, Michael left it all to God to rebuke the devil, which resulted in him losing the battle. Once again, we see Angel Michael in action in the book of Daniel when Angel Gabriel tells Daniel the reason Daniel's answer was delayed. Gabriel mentioned that he was battled and delayed by a demon called the Prince of Persia for 3 weeks until the Archangel Michael came to his assistance. Again, Michael gets mentioned in the book of Daniel in a prophecy about the end times, where Michael will stand up and people whose names are found in the book of life will be delivered. From these passages, we can tell that Michael has a high rank as an angel and that he is a warrior who fights battles in heaven and on earth. Talking about battles fought by angels on earth, it may actually sound like a myth to you, but there's an actual biblical battle with evidence. Recently, researchers made a wonderful discovery that confirms that one of the battles detailed in the Bible actually took place some 2,700 years ago in Jerusalem. According to the Bible, an angel of the Lord descended on the invading Assyrian troops when they tried to capture the Holy Land of Jerusalem and killed about 185,000 soldiers in a single night. The Assyrian Empire, as we know it, reigned from 1365 to 609 BC. And at the time, King Sennacherib of the empire led a campaign to control all routes across the Syrian desert that led to the Mediterranean Sea. Carvings found on the walls of Sennacherib's palace depict the conquest of Lachish, a city 42 miles south of Jerusalem, confirming that the archaeological site was indeed the site of Sennacherib's camp from the siege of Jerusalem, which was featured in 3 books of the Bible. These books include Isaiah, the 2nd book of Kings, and the 2nd Chronicles, all detailing the gory events of the era. Using the 2nd book of Kings as a reference, we see how the Judean king Hezekiah rebelled against the king of Assyria, being Shalmaneser at the time, and would not serve him, a rebellion that initially went disastrous for the Judeans because God wanted to punish them. By the 14th year of Hezekiah, the reigning king of Assyria, Sennacherib, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and took them. That made Hezekiah send to Sennacherib at Lachish, saying, "I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear." So the Assyrian king required of Hezekiah 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. But even after Hezekiah gave him all that he had, including the treasures of God's temple, Sennacherib was not pleased. Instead, he sent his servant, the Rabshakeh, to threaten Judah and to mock God. The Rabshakeh first tells the Judeans that relying on Egypt, which was Hezekiah's powerful ally at the time, is like relying on a broken reed of a staff, which will pierce the hand of any man who leans on it. He then claims that they cannot rely upon God either, because he is angry with Judah for Hezekiah's religious reforms, claiming God personally told the Assyrians to invade Judah. Undoubtedly, that must have scared the people, but in no time, the prophet Isaiah assured Hezekiah that the message was a lie. When the Rabshakeh's speech didn't work, King Sennacherib followed up with his own letter, mocking God outright instead, saying since he conquered other lands without their gods fighting for them, no god would save Jerusalem from his hands. Hezekiah took the letter to the temple and prayed to God to save his people, and thereby showing that unlike the gods of the various pagans conquered by the Assyrians, the God of Israel is the true God. Through the prophet Isaiah, God responded by saying, "Concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into this city or shoot an arrow there, or come before it with a shield, or cast up a siege mound against it. By the way that he came, By the same he shall return, and he shall not come into this city, says the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it, for my own sake, and for the sake of my servant David. The same night, the angel of the Lord went out and killed 185,000 soldiers in the camp of the Assyrians, sparing some of them, including their king. On seeing what had happened, Sennacherib deserted his camp and fled, only to be killed by his son's sword. While other stories of angels fighting battles for Israel may not have been confirmed today, Israel has won so many battles in ways that defy human reasoning. But before we go into more stories, let's discuss our subscribers pick. On October 7th, 2023, Israel was attacked by an estimated 3,000 rockets, and amidst the battle, a video surfaced on TikTok showing what looks like an angel in the sky. The video sent users into a frenzy, with some claiming that an angel appeared to fight Israel's battle, while some seemed to have explanations for the strange sight caught on camera. Some commenters pointed out that the video could easily be edited to create the effect, while some have said that missile explosions might have left many strange clouds in the sky. You see, people have found it hard to believe that an angel actually appeared in the sky because there have been a lot of fake CGI videos claiming to be real paranormal experiences. But if you have ever heard about stories of how angels have fought for Israel, you would believe that it's happening now in Israel. Archangel Michael appears in Israel to fight battles from time to time. If that is not true, how do you explain the Battle of Mishmar Hemek? It was on April 4, 1948, when the Arabs went to war with Israel intending to take the kibbutz, Mishmar Hemek, for strategic location. The Israelis were outnumbered 10-3, unable to catch a break, as artillery shells rained down on them. But while all hopes were deemed lost, they were never going to surrender to their enemies as they continued to push for victory. And just like a dream, the highly outnumbered Jewish forces managed to go on the offensive, successfully taking over the Arab villages surrounding the kibbutz. This attack led to the Arab Liberation Army's retreat and was the last significant stand of the Arab Liberation Front in the Israeli War of Independence. If that was just luck at play, what about the time a small Israeli platoon fought the Jordanian military for Mount Zion? During that battle, the Israelis found themselves surrounded by hundreds of their enemies, but they only had 25 bullets left to fight them off. With a sad end seemingly near, the men agreed to go out regardless and readied themselves to make good use of every last bullet. Then, just when the small platoon was about to face the inevitable, something incredible happened. The Jordanian soldiers dropped their weapons and suddenly started to run away, screaming, "Abraham!" No one could explain what had happened until several years later when they saw one of the Jordanian soldiers who fought against Israel on Mount Zion. According to him, his army all witnessed a vision of Abraham defending the Jews in the sky above the Israeli platoon and had no choice but to drop their weapons. Another miraculous win for Israel happened when they were saving the kibbutz. During the War of Independence, 24 homemade Israeli armored trucks and cars took a wrong turn on the way to aid a besieged kibbutz. They crossed and accidentally entered Lebanon, but only realized their mistakes when they ran into 20 brand new Syrian armored cars traveling with dozens of Syrian supplies trucks carrying ammunition and artillery. The Israelis immediately fired at the first Syrian truck and amazingly hit a tank loaded with gasoline, causing an explosion, which set fire to the following truck full of hand grenades. One after the other, each truck in the Syrian convoy exploded, giving off loud booms that could be heard for miles, resulting in the surviving Syrians abandoning their cargo. With the Syrians gone, the Israelis drove the captured armored vehicles and Syrian weapons back on track. And by the time they finally got to the kibbutz, the Arab besiegers had already left. Apparently, after they heard rumors that the Israeli forces invaded Lebanon, they immediately fled back to Syria, abandoning their mission. Just like that, what seemed like an accidental turn saved an entire kibbutz. An accident? maybe that term does not apply to Israel. And in the case of the attack on Dagania, miracle seems to be the perfect word. Shortly after the Independence War, nearly all of the Syrian forces stationed at Tel al-Qasr used 200 armored Syrian vehicles, including 45 tanks, to attack Israel's oldest kibbutzim, Dagania Aleph or Dagania A and Dagania Bet, or say Dagania B. The Israelis were about 70 in number, and they had no artillery, so there was virtually no chance of blocking a Syrian advance. However, they wouldn't go down without a fight. When the tanks approached Dagania A, the minimal Israeli forces began to throw Molotov cocktails missing targets, except one that made a direct hit on the first approaching Syrian tank. Suddenly, the entire Syrian column was turning around and fleeing for no reason at all. Even when the Syrians hit Dagania B, the Israelis were incredibly low on weapons, but quickly assembled 2 ancient French cannons and used them well against the Syrians' 75mm cannons, together with 60 and 81mm mortars. The use of Israel's little artillery must have really taken the Syrians by great surprise. But why exactly would they retreat when they had Israel outgunned and outnumbered? See? Miracles happen, especially in Israel. Next is the preemptive strike. Back in 1967, Egypt moved large forces and heavy artillery to the Sinai Desert, and in no time closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli ships and anyone bringing any military equipment to Israel. This was an act of war. But it soon became clear when Egypt, Syria, and Jordan formed a pact and placed their militaries on high alert for war. Then everyone knew that conflict was inevitable. But while Israel had horrible odds, their religious leader at the time was so confident in their victory that he openly declared the people of Israel would emerge from the current situation with remarkable success. And sure enough, their success was more than remarkable, it was miraculous. 200 Israeli Air Force planes headed toward Egyptian air bases, flying very low to avoid detection. However, a Jordanian radar facility was able to detect the unusual amount of aircraft approaching the sea. Jordan quickly sent out the message, Inab, which was a code for war to Egypt. Miraculously, however, the Egyptian coding frequencies were changed the very day before, and Jordan was not yet updated. Still, the miracle of the miscommunication was not enough. Egypt had enough anti-aircraft ammunition to destroy all the Israeli planes attacking, but because no order was given to launch any of those missiles on the Israeli crafts, Israel accomplished her mission and took down 204 Egyptian planes, the majority of which were in the Sinai Desert. While you can say that was a miscommunication, an unexplainable case was the Kusema incident. To win a 6-day war, Israel needed to retake the Egyptians' heavily fortified Kusema outpost. Again, the Egyptians had the upper hand, as they were in control of powerful forces capable of a great counterattack, while the Israelis were weary from a full day of battle. As the Israeli defense forces drew near, they heard massive explosions coming from the Egyptians' side. But when they arrived, they saw that the Egyptians had destroyed their equipment and abandoned the base, for no apparent reason. As the day continued, it became clear that the Egyptians were hastily abandoning many of their outposts and their supplies along with them. Still, they didn't understand why they fled until an Egyptian soldier claimed that they saw a gigantic hand come out from the sky. Terrified, they immediately turned around and ran away. But that's not all. Israelis had another miraculous win when they were taking back Jerusalem. It was a battle between the Jordanian soldiers and the Israelis that occurred for 2 violent days throughout the old city of East Jerusalem, starting on June 5, 1967. On June 7th, an eerie silence suddenly befell the city when Jordanian firing stopped, prompting the Israeli troops to check if they had set a trap for them. However, their report was of no trap, but of a miracle. They met the city empty with only the equipment that the Jordanian army left behind, and just like that, the Israeli forces entered East Jerusalem and took the Temple Mount, reaching the Western Wall without even firing a single shot. The people of Israel had attempted to take the land severally, but they never retook all of Jerusalem until June 8, 1967. On this day, Israel not only had the land, but had her holiest city of Jerusalem for the first time in almost 2,000 years, fulfilling the scripture, according to Zechariah 8 verse 3, which says, "The Lord says, I will return to Zion and dwell in Jerusalem." If it was not an angel invisibly fighting for Israel, how can anyone explain? The Golan Heights attack. At the end of the Six-Day War to retake the Golan Heights, Israel had to win an uphill battle against a heavily entrenched and well-fortified Syrian army, consisting of 75,000 troops. During the battle, about 30,000 Israeli lives were lost. Yet, just after 7 hours of heavy fighting, Israel had miraculously gained control of the main sectors. The next morning, the Israeli forces still expected another day of fierce fighting and victory, but the Syrians had other plans. Before the Israelis even got to them, they pulled out of the Golan, fleeing frantically and leaving their weapons behind. Miraculously, the mountains, which were once strategically used to murder Jews, had fallen into the hands of the Jews. Now let's fast forward to 1991 and try to comprehend how Israel survived. 39 rockets. Without any Israeli instigation, Iraq tried to provoke Israel into retaliating by firing 39 missiles into the country. Despite this, Israel did not retaliate and miraculously managed to stay out of the Gulf War, much due to U.S. encouragement. Many Iraqi Scud missiles were intercepted by Patriot missiles from the U.S., but not all of them. Still, throughout all of the numerous strikes on the West Bank, there was not a single death, and of all of the missiles fired, 2 disappeared, with no one taking credit for preventing the strikes. Even when a missile struck a garbage dump, it didn't explode for an unknown reason, and the one that landed just several feet away from a gas station, which could have caused devastation, also did not explode. Multiple missiles missed Iraq's intended targets, instead landing in the Mediterranean Sea, one of which had gotten thrown off course by some inexplicable strong winds. Other missiles did hit and did actually explode. One of these exploded between 2 buildings and completely destroyed both of them, but somehow not a single soul was lost in this strike. At the time this happened, not everyone realized the magnitude of the miracle until tragedy struck when over 40 people were killed in a single missile strike on a U.S. Marine bunker in Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, miracles do not occur for everyone. However, the rate of miracles in Israel is undoubtedly exceptionally high. Let's take it further by talking about an averted massacre. In 2014, it was discovered that Hamas was building tunnels that would enable them to transport weapons and launch an attack on Israel on July 17th. Also, in the weeks before the planned date, Hamas terrorists reportedly scouted out the area where one of their tunnels would potentially end, near the farming village of Sufa, and they saw that it was perfect for their plan. It was a perfect location because at the time, the location was a populated area of farmers concealed by tall wheat, which meant Israel would lose a lot of people. However, the terrorists didn't know they were only digging their own graves. According to Jewish customs, there is a biblical mandate that requires farmers to harvest before taking a sabbatical year, after which they are prohibited from harvesting. This sabbatical year begins around the planned attack date, so on July 17th, while the terrorists exited their completed tunnel, they were met with an empty, open land because the religious farmers were no longer harvesting. Not only did the massacre get averted miraculously, but the terrorists were also exposed. Without the tall wheat for cover, the terrorists were quickly spotted and intercepted by the Israeli Defense Forces. Till today, Israel still fights battles, but looking at the history of this country, it seems her guardian and battle angel is still very much active. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.